Hi, I'm Jeff Londash, and welcome to 66 Days to Success. This is going to be a special show this month, and I'm really glad to do this because we're going to be featuring Second Harvest Food Bank. And if I've ever wanted you to watch one show in particular, it's this one. In fact, I want you to call anybody you know and ask them to please watch this show because we're going to ask for your help. 1 in 5 families in the Mahoning Valley don't know where their next meal is going to be. They need help in feeding their family every single month. 1 in 4 children don't know where their next meal is going to be. Senior citizens have to make a decision between paying an electric bill or putting food on their table. So they need help from a food pantry. We go about our lives every day doing what we do, taking Janie to dance lessons and Billy to baseball, and we're so busy and so consumed with living our lives that sometimes we don't pay attention to some things that really need our attention. And feeding people in the Mahoning Valley needs our attention. This is unacceptable that people today in 2018, in the year of 2018, that many families are going and struggling and not knowing where their next meal is going to come from. And we can solve this. And the Second Harvest Food Bank is where it all begins. They do a tremendous job there. And a lot of you out there already donate to them, and we thank you for that. And if you're not donating to them right now, I'm going to ask you to please consider it. And I'm going to give you some statistics why. You can give them food, and they love that because they distribute over 10 million pounds of food a year right here in the Mahoning Valley, in Trumbull, Mahoning, and Columbiana County. They service over 150 food pantries. This is how bad and devastating the food and hunger problem is right here. 1 in 5 families is affected. Think of that. 1 out of every 5 houses on your street, you might know who they are and you might not know who they are struggling. Veterans, senior citizens, children. The list goes on. And this is a fixable problem. And together as a community, we can do that. So at Armstrong, we are going to Avenge Hunger this month. We are going to make sure that everyone's aware of what's going on with the hunger problem in the Mahoning Valley. It's National Hunger Awareness Month right now in September. That's why I'm wearing orange, because that's the color of it. We want you to sit back, and I'm going to bring in Mr. Mike Iberis. He runs the Second Harvest Food Bank, and he's going to tell us about what goes on down there and how they operate and how the food comes in and where it goes. Then we're going to talk to Dr. Kathy Padgitt, and she's going to talk about nutrition, why it's so important that children today have the proper nutrition that they're not getting, and how it affects them in school and how it affects them in growth. Then we're going to talk to 3 individual agencies, food pantries, and how they operate on a daily basis. It's kind of sad, and it'll make you angry when you find out that these are not people that are coming to these agencies that just don't care and they're not going to get a job because they can get free food. It's not about that at all. These are people that are working, that are struggling and trying very hard to sustain a living, but they just can't make it because of the wages that are out there today and the lack of good jobs and good paying jobs. And these are good people that are trying to take care of their families, and they need a little extra help. And it's something that we all can do. We're not asking for much. So please, sit back and enjoy this show. Oh, and one more thing. Starting on Labor Day and going through the end of the year, there's going to be a fella that's going to go out and he's going to attempt to hug 100,000 people in an effort to raise $100,000 for the Second Harvest Food Bank. Now let me translate that for you. That $100,000 is able to turn into $1.1 million of food. Mr. Iberis, when we interview him, he's going to tell you how that works. For every dollar that you donate, they are able to turn that into $11 of food. So if we raise $100,000, that turns into $1.1 million of food. And $1 feeds, that turns into 5 meals. So that $100,000, that's 500,000 meals, or $1.1 million to help them feed people in the Mahoning Valley, in Trumbull, Mahoning, and Columbiana County. You could help. We're going to formulate something called Annie's Army, and you could be a volunteer there, and you can help us reach our goal. And on Armstrong, you're going to find out a little bit more about that. through our YouTube channel, through Facebook, and through some spots that we'll be running there. So please sit back and enjoy this show. Take it in, listen to it, let it sink in about how bad the hunger problem here in Youngstown, Warren, and Columbiana area is. I'm sure by the end of this show, you're gonna wanna help. And we're gonna love for the fact that you will. You probably already are. And if you're somebody out there who is struggling, and if you're looking, you need some help at the end of the month to help feed your family, whether you're a senior citizen and you need a little bit of help, whether you're a veteran and you need a little bit of help, or whether you're somebody out there who's working and just not making enough when it comes to the last few days of the month and you need a little help, you're gonna find out how you can get that help too. Because it is here, right at the Second Harvest Food Bank, by them dispersing to over 150 different food pantries. So again, sit back, enjoy this show. After you watch it, please make a concerted effort up here to help out, be a volunteer, and make sure that we could end, this is all fixable, folks. We can put an end to hunger right now because we are going to wage war on hunger in the Mahoning Valley through Operation 11 to 1, which you're going to find out about in the next few days, in the next few months, all the way through the end of the year. So again, sit back, watch this. Mr. Mike Iberis is coming right up. Welcome back to 66 Days to Success. I'm now here with Mr. Mike Iberis. He's the Executive Director of the Second Harvest Food Bank. Mike, thanks for having us in today.
Well, glad to have you here, Jeff. Thank you for doing this.
We're going to have a very interesting program for you today because we're going to enlighten you on what exactly is going on in the Mahoning Valley in terms of hunger. September is the National Hunger Action Month. Do we really need to have a month to let people know that there's hungry people out there?
Well, unfortunately we do, because there are hungry people out
Yes,
here,
there
not
are.
only in the Mahoning Valley, but throughout the state of Ohio and throughout the nation, probably more so than we've seen in generations. And there's a lot of reasons for that, which I'm sure we're going to talk about today, and we're going to talk about it in your show as it goes on. It's just, it's a sad situation that we have senior citizens, we have children, we have families with children, without children, that are struggling to feed themselves.
Let's get the percentages out of the way real quick to let, right off the bat, tell people how many people, like one out of how many, is considered in need of food in the Mahoning Valley as adults and as children and as seniors?
The numbers we're getting is 1 out of 5 children are food insecure. Probably 20%, a fifth of the families in the Mahoning Valley are not sure if they can find enough food every month for themselves. So the numbers are staggering. When you look at kids that go to school, 52% of the kids in Columbiana, Mahoning, and Trumbull County that are going to school, their families are eligible for free or reduced lunch. Now that's a big number.
Yes, it is.
Unfortunately, the sad part of it is that number is a standard number, an average number for the state of Ohio. And taking it one step further, it's the same number for the country. So 50% of the people in this country are eligible for, 50% of the students are eligible for free or reduced lunch. So their families they're at or below the poverty level. So that's the situation we find ourselves in.
And these numbers over the last decade have not declined. They're steadily rising, correct?
They have been slower than they were a decade ago, but they still are on the rise. They kind of leveled off there for a while, a few months, and then they kind of started creeping up. So it's not a steep decline, but the numbers just keep inching up little by little.
And you know, the most disheartening thing when you consider the fact that about how many people don't know where their next meal is going to come from, it's really a problem that could be addressed and could be taken care of with just the community getting a little bit more involved and helping out a little bit more by donating a little bit more, either their money or by buying food for the pantries. It can be handled. You guys do a tremendous job down here in what you do. You help out over 150 different agencies that you supply food to. We're going to talk later in the show, we're going to talk to a few of those agencies that represent only 3 of them represent about 1,500 families. So you could just take those numbers and move them out to 150. It's just unacceptable. We could do better here in the Mahoning Valley of helping those people with food donations and with some monetary donations. Because really, you love to take food donations here. It helps out tremendously. But actually, when you donate $1 to the Second Harvest Food Bank, instead of buying a canned good, if you donate $1, you're able to make that dollar turn into so much more food than just a canned good.
We are, for every dollar donated, and by the way, all the money that's donated to the Second Harvest Food Bank of the Mahoning Valley stays in the Mahoning Valley.
Okay.
It doesn't get shipped out, which I think is important for people to know, that their donation is staying local. And the facts that you just mentioned, for every dollar that we raise, we can provide 5 meals. We can leverage it. For every dollar raised, we can provide the equivalent of $11 worth of food. So that's our ability to leverage through donations from national donors, local donors, and other people in the community and through the nation that are donating food and funds to us.
I don't want to be redundant here, but I want to go over that one more time. Every dollar turns into 5 meals. And every dollar you can turn in through your leveraging, you could turn it into $11 worth of food. That's how important just $1 to help them out is. And over the course of, if you had everybody doing just $1, how much easier it would be to feed everybody in this valley. That's what I mean. It's a fixable problem. I think we all have $1. And we're all going out and spending $5 or $6 on a cup of coffee. If you just took one less cup of coffee a week, $5, you just bought 30 meals. Or 25 meals, excuse me.
That's right. We have a generous community. I think we have to acknowledge that. There's so many people, there's so many organizations that contribute and support the food bank in so many different ways, monetarily, food donations, volunteerism. There's just so many ways of doing it. And there's still, as you said, though, the ability to do a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of folks, not because they don't want to support the food bank or support hungry friends and neighbors that sometimes they know or don't know need help, but it's just that they don't have the information. And that's why what you're doing here is going to be so beneficial, because it's going to educate a lot of people that are going to just say, after they watch this show, they're going to say, wow, I didn't realize that. I didn't realize that the problem was so big. I didn't realize that, to use your terms, is fixable, that we can maybe make a little bit more of a dent in hunger.
Or that every 5th house on your street is struggling to put food on their table every night.
It seems like everyone knows someone who's struggling. Everyone knows a friend, a relative, a neighbor who's having a tough time. There's very few people that aren't touched by this somewhere in their life. And so it's becoming, as we talked about earlier, it's becoming more evident that those people exist. So I think as people learn more and more, we continue to get more people calling us and saying, how can I help? What can I do? Can I do a food drive? Can I do a fund drive? What can I do to help you?
And there are 3 ways that you can, and that's donating food, donating time, donating money, doing those fund drives in your neighborhood. Just on a Saturday, have your family go around and maybe pass out some flyers, and then put together that fun food drive where then you'll go collect the food and bring it down to the Second Harvest Food Bank. It's just that simple. It's not a very time-consuming thing, but that little effort goes so much. If you take that out and 50 families did that weren't doing it today, how much more food and money you would be able to bring to the table to help people out. 150 organizations are helping to disperse food in this area that you take care of here at the Second Harvest Food Bank. That's quite a bit.
That's correct. They're mostly faith-based, mostly churches, and they do a phenomenal job. Last year, we distributed 10.6 million pounds of food to those 150 partner agencies. This year, it looks like we're going to come closer to 11 million pounds of food. That's 40,000 pounds of food a day. That's the equivalent of 2 semis. So 2 semis, if you visualize, and people will ask, well, 40,000 pounds of food, how much is that? If you visualize a semi going down the road, it's 2 semis a day that are coming in here and 2 semis a day of food that's going out of here to those 150 agencies. That's 40,000 pounds, and that's every day. So that kind of gives you an idea of the scope of how much food is going out in Columbiana, Mahoning, and Trumbull County, and how much food is coming into the food bank that we're able to secure through donations and other means.
We talked off camera a little bit ago, Mike, and we talked about some of the people that need the help, and you brought up you called it the working poor. That they are working. These are people that are not just sitting at home trying to collect a check or not caring about anything. These are people that are actually out working, but unfortunately their wage isn't great enough to sustain them if they have a family, and that's where you're seeing a lot of increase.
We are. I'll just give one example. I visited a pantry in Salem that was distributing food, and I saw this young couple with a little boy, maybe 5 years old, and I start talking to them, and they explained that they both work. They're both working part-time at a organization or a business. It's a sandwich shop in the Salem area, and they both work 20 hours a week part-time because, of course, many jobs today are available, but they're not necessarily full-time.
Full-time level now because of the benefit thing.
It is, and that's just indicative of our society and our country right now. Many jobs are close to minimum wage and part-time because companies aren't paying the wages that they did years ago or that were available years ago, and the benefit package. But we were chatting, and they said, well, you know what? We both work, and we make enough money to pay the rent, to put gas in the truck, and to buy clothes for our son here. But at the end of the month, we need to come to this pantry for these groceries because that makes all the difference in the world to us. And other than that, we're getting along. Now, they're not getting ahead, certainly, but they're getting along. And then at another time, I met a lady at another pantry, and she was coming for food, had her little buggy with her. She said, I just live down the street, about 3 houses away from this church. And she said, I never thought I was going to live this long. And it sounded like this was maybe 5 or 6 years ago. It sounded like she lived through the Depression of the 30s. And she said, I never thought I'd be in a food line again. So I didn't ask her, but I got the impression that she did live, at least as a child, because she was probably late 80s or 90s, somewhere in there. And she said, but I'm at a point now in my life where the utilities, the medical costs are just taking too much of my Social Security check. And this is the first time I've come here. And she said, I don't want to come here, but these folks have been very kind, and they're very generous, they're very compassionate, and I feel that I feel good about it. And so that's what we're seeing. We're seeing the young, the working poor. We're seeing the elderly who didn't think they were going to live this long, and now they're living, and now what do I do? Because I'm paying my utilities.
You got to make that choice. Do you
sure.
want your lights on, or do you want to have food tonight?
Yeah. So I come to a pantry. And this is where these pantries that you're going to be talking with later, this is why they're so important, because they provide that emergency bag of food, that emergency box to a senior, to a young family that maybe is making the difference for those folks for that month.
It's got to be a humbling and somewhat aggravating situation at the same time that people have to struggle and go through this in 2018. That we are not at a point that food should be in abundance like it is, and that people still in our area, not only in our area, but in our state and in our country, go through this every month. And somehow, some way, I think it's fixable. I think that if we make more people aware of the situation, of the fine work that you do down here, which is incredible, the crews that you have. How many employees do you have here, Mike?
We have 22.
22 employees, okay? And how many volunteers come in and help out?
We have hundreds of volunteers.
Yeah, because there's no way you could do what you do with just 22 employees.
The number of hours that employees, or I'm sorry, the number of hours that volunteers provide us come out to equivalent of 9 full-time employees. And without all of those volunteer hours, you're right, we couldn't do it. We just couldn't do it. Because many of those 22 employees are part-timers. Because there's times here when you need the help, like in the morning, when you're getting orders ready and so on, and then in the afternoon it kind of dies off. And a lot of the folks that we have, they've come by, they're retired, and they want something to do, and they started off as a volunteer, and then we've needed someone like 5 days a week, maybe for 4 hours, because that's the busy time, and they're more than glad to do it because they want something to do, and they're able to come here and do something that they like doing, and it works out great for everyone.
So someone that's watching the show right now and is in need of help, and for some reason or another they didn't know that the food pantries existed or Second Harvest existed, how do they go about getting the help and assistance?
If you live in a community and you don't know where there's a food pantry in your community, you call 211. By calling 211, which gets you down to the help network, they will then, a counselor then will talk with you and just ask you simple questions like, where do you live? What's your zip code? And then once you give them your zip code, they can look at the list, because they have our list at the Help Network, and they can look at the list and say, okay, you have a pantry here, and you have a pantry here that's in your zip code. And this one's open on such and such a date from this time, and the other one is open another time. And then you can then select where you'd like to go to pick up some emergency food.
So they don't necessarily come down here. They'll go to a food pantry. This is not where they pick their food up at.
We do not distribute food to people here at this food bank. We're required to distribute food to the pantries and the soup kitchens. They then will distribute the food to the hungry person.
Okay, I just wanted to make that clear.
Yeah,
I don't want to think
right.
that people out there thinking they come down here to get it. And there's plenty of food pantries out there and one close by, no matter where you live in the Tri-County area. So just dial that 211, and if you're having a little time where you're in need of some extra help and some food, they'll tell you where you can go get it. You know, Armstrong this month is going to be doing a very, very big push. And I do the show. I'm not an employee of Armstrong. What they're doing is a very, very good thing. They're going to help promote, not only through this show, but through other means and methods of really letting the community know how important it is to help out with the Second Harvest Food Bank, and just how bad we just got to say it how it is, just how bad the hunger level is in the Mahoning Valley. You know, we had an article in the Vindicator a few weeks back talking about that we are number 2. Youngstown is number 2 per capita in, at some point in the year, a family not knowing where their next meal is going to come from. They called it hunger deprived, I believe. I forget the exact term.
Insecurity.
Hunger insecurity. Sorry. And it's just so unacceptable that in Youngstown, Ohio, that we allow it. I'm mad at myself for not doing more. I just think it's fixable. I think that if we all dig in just a little bit by either making a monetary donation, remember that's 11 to 1. For every dollar you donate, that turns into $11 of food, or by donating food, or by donating time. This is one of the leanest run organizations in terms of charitable organizations that you could ever see, with some of the greatest people that you will ever meet. I've never met a finer bunch of people that are so intent on doing good for the people in this community. We live in such a great area. We really do. We're blessed. Mm-hmm. If you go travel anywhere else, you don't have, I know Youngstown gets its little remarks about our past or whatever. But the people here are the best people in the world, and we're good at helping each other out. Sometimes we just get caught up and don't pay attention to where we need to help out a little bit more. And this is one, because children going and not knowing where their next meal is going to be is just not acceptable. And think of their parents and what they're going through, trying to find out where that next meal is going to be. Again, we're not talking about people that aren't trying. You know, Mike just told you about the couple that they're both working.
Mm-hmm.
They're both trying. They call it the working poor. They just can't make ends meet by the end of the month, and that's why just under 11 million pounds of food was given out last year. Mike, I think that the people we have lined up after you are going to tell us some really good stories. You have Dr. Padgitt coming up, mm-hmm. and she's going to talk about nutrition and why it's so important. We grew up learning about 3 meals a day. It's still prevalent. But she's going to tell you about how that in children, why it's so necessary and why it's so wrong for the processed foods to get into a child's system at a young age, because it's detrimental to their growth, and it's detrimental to them learning and a lot of things. She's gonna be a real good interview. You're gonna want to see that. And we have people that actually mm-hmm. run food pantries coming up that you've lined up, and I'm very interested to hear what they have to say, because they work it and live it on a daily basis, like you do down here. But they're in the trenches. They're dealing, seeing the people coming in and handing out the food, and it's got to weigh on you a little bit, I would think.
We couldn't do it without the people that you're going to be interviewing later on in the program. And you're exactly right about Armstrong. They've been consistent supporters of the Second Harvest Food Bank of Mahoning Valley for years. And every year they're doing something to get the message out, something to raise money, and all year long they have an internal program to help raise money for hunger. So yeah, Armstrong does an outstanding job of supporting the hunger initiative and the hunger issue. Yeah.
Dan and Megan and Greg, everybody up there should be highly commended. They do breaking bread all year mm-hmm. for you, and in the month of September they're going to have Avenge Hunger month, where they're going to make a big push to help bring out the attention of why it's so necessary that we all get together as a community to help out. It's really something we all could do. It's not going to take very much time. It's not going to take very much effort. It's not going to take very much money if we all together work together to help end hunger in the valley. I think there's no reason why we can't, if we wanted to.
There isn't. I think we should try.
Yeah.
I mean, we have been trying, and we've engaged a lot of people. Thousands of people
We've done a tremendous job with
in this mission. And there's still room for more. And I get that all the time. Say, you know what? I want to help you, and I'm just finding out now how bad the situation is. And I understand that, because people are busy with their own lives. Let's face it.
Yeah.
They're doing things, and a lot of things are just oblivious to them at this point, because they're not in need, and sometimes they don't see it. But as soon as they learn about it, like from this show and other things, then all of a sudden it's like, wow, the light goes on. So, I can make a little bit of a difference. And that's all it takes. If everybody makes a little bit of a difference, it'll go a long way.
We're not asking you alone to put an end to it. We're just asking you to be a part of it. We have also, with Avenge Hunger at Armstrong, there's going to be something coming up that I think you're going to like in the month of September, starting on Labor Day and going all the way through the end of the year. So we're going to make a conscious effort. There's a guy out there that likes to hug people, and he's going to try to hug 100,000 people, not just in the valley. He's going to go across the country in a few other locations, but to raise $100,000 for the food bank right here in the Mahoning Valley. And if we could turn that, now that $100,000 is going to turn into $1.1 million of food, or 500,000 meals.
Do the math. That's
now,
right.
He can't do that by himself. He's going to need help from people like you to help donate a little bit, and it's not a hard thing to do. If you set your mind to it, and what we are doing by making this attempt is we're basically we're waging war on hunger in the Mahoning Valley, and we're not going to lose. And you're going to learn how you could join Annie's Army and help out and be a part and a volunteer there to let's make a big dent in it and put Youngstown, the greater Youngstown area that Second Harvest deals with, over the top in helping out the people on our street, that every fifth house that's struggling that we don't know which one of those 5 houses it is, but one of those 5 houses is struggling to put food on a table.
They are, and I think you're right. I think it's doable. I think that obviously people like the guy who's going to be hugging, the fact that that person is going to come out and give their time to do something is beneficial in their perception as ending hunger goes a long way.
Yeah.
Incredible.
And I'm wearing orange today for a reason, and I'll let you explain why.
Well, Hunger Action Month is it's orange. That's the color for Hunger Action Month. So we wear orange here in September.
The whole month.
The whole month, and it's just a color that shows that we're supporting hunger advocacy, and that we want to do something to help people that are in need.
It's one of the staples of life. Without food and health, nothing else matters. Really, it's just that simple, isn't it?
I think you're going to hear that from Dr. Padgitt later
Yes.
on about the correlation between the food. I mean, let's face it, it's common sense, right? If you're eating healthy, you're going to be healthy, which means you're not going to be as ill, perhaps, and it goes hand in hand. So it's a matter of education. It's a matter of providing the resources, and that's a challenge we're all going to have. All
righty, Mike, I'm going to say thank you very much for everything you do at Second Harvest Food Bank, and the folks at Armstrong are going to continue on with Avenge Hunger and help you in Breaking Bread, their initiative that they do all year long. If you're an Armstrong customer, you can go donate food when you pay your bill at Armstrong. Go to their office. They have a big shopping cart there that you could drop your food off there. I know Giant Eagle does a big push for you. You're always going to see it somewhere, but when you see it, please believe me when I tell you, please make that donation, because it is not going to administrative costs. It's going to help out that 1 in 5 people that are in desperate need every month. And no child and no senior citizen, especially the senior citizens that have given to our country, and whether they're veterans, not veterans, but they've worked on and paid taxes all their life, they shouldn't have to worry about, if they're going to pay their light bill or if they're going to be able to buy food for themselves that night. It's just so unacceptable.
Well, Jeff, thank you for caring. Appreciate you doing this, and I think we're going to get the message out.
I think we are, and I think you're going to help. I think you're ready. And please don't go away, and please tell people about this show. If you're watching it now, call them up, because there's going to be a few more great interviews that you're not going to want to miss about nutrition and about what these other agencies are doing by helping the people out with the food in the food pantries. So we're going to take a break right here. Mike, thanks again, buddy.
Thanks, Jeff.
And we'll be seeing a lot more of you through the end of the year. And we'll be right back after this quick break. Welcome back to 66 Days to Success. I'm with Dr. Kathy Padgitt. Thank you for coming in today.
Thank you.
And you're going to hear some incredible things about nutrition that I'm 60 years old, and you would think that I would know some of these things by now. And unfortunately, I don't eat very well. I'm a sugar junkie, and I can't stop, and I've learned some things now why I can't stop. So let's start a little bit and talk about nutrition. Second Harvest Food Bank, they do such a wonderful job here in providing food for our valley, but there's a real need for nutrition in terms of 3 meals a day, and why that's important, not only for children, but for the adults also. So
Absolutely.
Let's just get right into nutrition.
Absolutely, especially when you talk about children and development and brain development. The brain continues to develop up into the age of 25, especially what's called the prefrontal cortex that does all the executive thinking, and that's not fully matured until you're close to about 25 years old. So you need to be able to provide that developing brain with nutrition, and it's important to provide it with optimal nutrients to provide it with antioxidants, and to provide it with healthy fats, because that's what really makes it grow. The brain is composed primarily of healthy fat. So that's a really important thing for young children. And it's been shown that children do better in school, they do better in athletics, they do better in every way if they have a well-rounded diet that's heavy in fresh produce, fresh fruit, fresh vegetables, rather than more processed type foods. And the food bank does a great job in trying to get out, fresh vegetables, fresh fruits to people, dried beans, all these kinds of things that really will help a young brain grow well.
So when we're grabbing that box of cereal in the morning, we think because it'll say on there has all the nutrients we need and all the vitamins that we need, it's really not the best choice for us, especially for children.
No, a processed cereal, one that's been sugar sweetened or processed, really breaks down very rapidly in the body into just pure sugar. And the problem and the issue with this is that sugar, table sugar that's often used or added to these products, breaks down into glucose, which the body processes pretty well, but also fructose. And fructose and glucose, when taken together, can actually increase excitatory neurotransmitters in the brain. So when kids get that cupcake high, that's what it's from. So if you feed them a very highly sugar sweetened cereal breakfast, send them off to school, and then wonder why somebody's sending them to the principal's office because they can't sit in the chair, or they just hit their friend in the back of the head with an eraser. There's a lot of reasons for that. And
So it could be sugar related then?
Could definitely be sugar related. Absolutely.
So even at a young age, let's say a 2-year-old to 3-year-old, when we hear about the terrible twos, that could possibly even be a reason there why they sort of act out if they're eating too many cookies or too much processed food.
Absolutely. One thing that's often told to parents is, oh, juice, you can give them juice. But juice for a baby who's 18 months, 2 years old, 3 years old, that's a pure sugar rush for a child.
It's kind of funny. I have a 2-year-old grandson, and my daughter was called me the other night, and she says, we don't know what's wrong. There's a new baby in the house, and think it's a jealousy thing, but it could possibly be that he does drink a lot of juice, and never was out of consideration because juice is supposedly juice and good for you.
Well, juice is pretty interesting. If you look at 8 ounces of orange juice and 8 ounces of Coca-Cola, teaspoon for teaspoon, they have the exact same amount of sugar.
Wow.
And the difference between if you eat an orange versus if you eat juice, an orange has all the fiber, all the pulp, you get all that when you chew it up, and that slows the sugar absorption into the body. But when you drink juice, there's nothing to slow it, there's no fiber. And even if you drink the pulp one, okay, there's not enough pulp to make a difference. So you just basically have just taken in pure sugar water, just the same way as if you had a Coke for breakfast.
Wow. I did not know that. I'm sure a lot of you didn't either. So let's just go into nutrition now. When we talk about 3 meals a day for a child, and if the child in the development at 3, 4, and 5 and is going to school or preschool, then to school, and they're not getting that breakfast in the morning, that's very detrimental to the growth and to the child in general when he's able to pay attention.
Right. There have been numerous studies, and I'm not a pediatrician, but there have been numerous studies that have shown that children who eat breakfast actually do better when it comes to math, to science, to English. They just score better on tests. They perform better. They just do better.
And that's not a processed breakfast.
That's not a processed breakfast. No.
That's not the box of cereal.
That's not the Pop-Tarts.
Right, and the Captain Crunch
No.
and the extra dump of sugar on there. And this also transfers to adults too, even after 25 when you were talking about the brain function when the cortex stops. But even on, we need those 3 balanced meals. Again, I guess balanced, do we even pay attention to that anymore?
I don't think people actually do pay attention to what balanced is. I'm not sure that anymore people really realize what balanced is, because we've all spent so much time in the, quote, fast lane, going through drive-throughs, eating the quickest food, grabbing something on the run, that a lot of the ability to be able to cook foods and think about them with salads and vegetables and whole grains as the main basis of the plate, and then some healthy protein, whether you opt for plant-based protein or whether you opt for animal-based protein. I think that's almost like an art form that's been lost because of the way life, at least in America, is lived at this point in time. And it's difficult. I mean, I work, my husband works. Sometimes it's very, very difficult to find the time to be able to do that. And if you have not only limited time, but limited financial resource, that becomes even that much more difficult. So when the food bank is able to provide people with vegetables and with fruits and give them some tips on what to do with that, that's very beneficial. Very beneficial.
And going, you touched on, that's why we're here, is for the Second Harvest Food Bank and what they do for the community. And when there's so many people in this area that have the need to use, through different agencies, what the Second Harvest Food Bank does for them, it's very good that they pay also attention to the nutritional value when they go home in that preparation.
Absolutely.
Especially for children. And that's where we wanted to talk to you, Dan. When we were talking off camera, you mentioned something that I thought was pretty astounding on how the sugar addiction versus...
So sugars that are added are often added as a form of fructose and as a form of glucose. But either way, fructose, when it's metabolized in the liver, is metabolized exactly like alcohol, and it can lead to liver damage. Increased amounts of sugar in total can go to the brain and activate the same kind of receptors as cocaine and heroin do, as well as alcohol and tobacco. Wow. So it can become a very addictive substance for many people.
And we don't even know that.
No,
so
no
someone
one
like me, and I'm the first, I'll admit it, I'm the sugar junkie. I cannot walk past the cookies or the brownies or any type of sweet whatsoever, or the Pepsi. I feel I have to have that. I limit myself to 1 can a day, but it's something that I have to have. So it's almost an addiction for me, I guess.
Well, it is. Your body's driven to find very nutrient-dense foods, because throughout time, the people who survived the longest were the people that could get the most nutrient density so that they could reproduce. If you starved to death, you didn't reproduce.
Right.
So in nature, when you look at food will either have high levels of sugars and carbohydrates, like rices and fruits and vegetables like potatoes and squashes. But they don't have, or foods will have high levels of fats, nuts, avocados, certain parts of animal meats, like a pork belly and things like that. They're natural foods. But what you don't see together in nature, if you go to a farm, is a food that's straight off the farm has both fats and sugar together. Those are only man-made products. We do that. We put fat and sugar together. And what the food industry has learned, that if you put fat and sugar together, you can get people to be basically addicted to your food. Hence the Snicker bar, the Mars bar, the cookie, the brownie, the cake, the pie. That's why people, if you're not really hungry and you've just had a meal, and Thanksgiving's probably the best example of this. You've just had Thanksgiving dinner, and you've had all the food. Very few people will walk by the pumpkin pie.
And that's because the brain's triggered?
That's because the brain is triggered to go, oh, look at that. Oh,
I have a little bit of room left.
I got just enough room for a piece of that with some whipped cream.
Yeah. Why not at that time? So the old adage of 3 meals a day still holds true today?
To some extent. It depends on what group of people you're talking about. There are some medical reasons not to eat 3 meals a day, and there are some ways that you can use fewer meals. But if you're talking about a child and you're talking about growth and nutrition and energy maintenance, then you're talking 3 meals a day.
While they're developing and growing.
While they're developing.
And that's another reason why this whole place of Second Harvest Food Bank is so important, so that those children,
right.
the statistics of how many in this area that don't know where their next meal is coming from is
it's astounding.
It's so sad. It's unbelievable, really, that in this day and age, that in any area across at least America, that this happens. And I just saw a statistic that in Youngstown came up as the second city per capita, I believe, and people having trouble, putting food on their plates at some point during the year. And that's just unacceptable.
That's completely unacceptable. And when you think about children, I think the statistic is 1 in 4.
Yeah.
1 in 4.
1 in 4 children.
1 in 4. So if you walk onto a playground, every 4th child potentially is somewhat food insecure, and that's just
not good for their development.
No.
Not good for their productivity.
Well, and it's not good for society as a whole, because those children are the people that later become adults, who then later become wage earners and taxpayers and help to sustain society. So if you don't support them, what's going to happen to the society in 20 years when they are the people that are supposed to sustain society?
Yeah.
Because that's the one thing you can be sure of, is that they will continue to grow, and we will all continue to get older.
That's right, and they're going to be taking care of us.
That's
hopefully
it.
At some point.
Hopefully at some point.
So if you could say something to the people out there on how important Second Harvest Food Bank is in terms of, one of the things that I love about this is that when you give to this charity, it's not really going to administrative. The percentage is so minute. And the work that they do here in providing food to the area, I believe it's up to over 10 million pounds now of food in a year, which again is, you used the word astounding. It's astounding and unacceptable, but it is, and it's a reality, and we need to do it so that those children could continue to have a chance to grow and not worry about where breakfast is coming the next day. Thank you very much. I think you've really enlightened us quite a bit here. We're going to talk to some people from some local agencies coming up, and they're going to tell us about how important it is when you make your donations of food or money to the Second Harvest Food Bank, exactly what happens at those organizations. Dr. Padgitt, thank you so very much for giving us your time today, and we really appreciate it. And we're going to come back in just a few moments with a few interviews that I think you're not going to want to miss. And welcome back to 66 Days to Success, a special edition here at the Second Harvest Food Bank. And I'd like to welcome in some folks that are going to show you and tell you exactly how the donations that you give in food or money go to them help people in our community. This is Sister Jean from the Emmanuel Community Center in Girard. Thank you for coming, Sister Jean. Norman and Anita Oles, from the New Life Church in Poland. And your food pantry is called God's Warehouse, and Eric Hinkle from the Warren Family Mission. So we would like to talk today about the process comes in, people make donations, food comes into the Second Harvest Food Bank, and now the real work begins. It goes out to an astounding over 150 different organizations like these fine people here help and donate their time to. I'm going to say that again, 150 different locations in this area is what the Second Harvest Food Bank helps out with. Sister Jean, let's start out with you. How many people do you help out on let's say a monthly basis in terms of handing out food?
We usually do about 200 households a month. We're open Monday through Friday, so we don't have one particular day for distributing food. People can come into our pantry once every 30 days and receive food from us. And we have a regular group of people that, need it on a monthly basis because they simply run out of food when it comes to the end of the month and they have nothing to feed themselves or their families with. So that usually is probably about 300 to 500 individuals, depending on how many people are in households.
Each month. So again, they have a day where some months they might not come in at all, but they're allowed to come in one time per month.
Yes.
And get the food they need to help sustain them, to get them through the rest of the month.
Yeah, we usually give enough food for 3 to 5 days to help them with food. It usually lasts a little bit longer than that, probably about a week's worth of food they get.
And Mr. and Mrs. Oles, you have up in Poland, Ohio, the same type of thing. You have God's Warehouse there, a food pantry. But how many families do you help serve?
We do about 500 a month, and that will vary depending upon the time of year. We do 500 during the winter time when the people have to pay utilities, and then our numbers are supposed to drop down about 350, but this year, strangely, the numbers have stayed up. And come November, when people are making a choice of paying last year's gas bill that they didn't pay or buying food, our numbers will go up to 600 families a month.
So the Second Harvest Food Bank is absolutely...
We couldn't do this without them. It's an amazement to me how my wife is very astute in every Friday when she is placing her order of choosing the food, and it's just amazing to me. And the nice thing is about this time of year, when the gardens and the farm producers, we will have as many as 14 different types of produce, and people are just simply amazed. Thing that I see so much lately is the elderly who, they lived through the Depression. They lived through World War II. The men who worked in the steel mills were on strike, and instead of asking for a handout, they planted a bigger garden. But today, the widow, the pension just isn't doing it. The pensions are being eaten up by taxes and medicines and other costs like that, and they're coming in and they're so embarrassed because they're asking for a handout, and then when we give them what we do, they go, oh my, and you see their tears in their eyes because we're just astounded how much we give them, and that's thanks to Second Harvest that we're able to do that.
It truly has to be a humbling experience to do this, because like you said, I grew up with my Bubba. She went through the Depression. My parents were on the cusp of it, but they used every scrap of food. They never took a handout. It was their mentality back then. And now when they're forced to, when the pensions that they get, and some people are getting a Social Security check of $600 or $700 a month, and you're expected to make that last by paying utilities and medicine today. Some medicines are that whole check for some of these people. I don't know how they exist, and it's got to be an incredibly humbling experience when they come in there, and also a feel-good experience that you're able to help them out. Eric Hinkle, you're from the Warren Family Mission now. Is the mission, describe the mission to us.
The mission, we have several different facilities over in Warren. We have basically like the men's facility, which is like the mission where people who are in bad situations or whatever, they can come stay with us, and we give them a place to stay and try to help them get back on their feet. We also have a women's facility up in Vienna, a Women and Children's Center in Warren, and then we have our church and everything in Warren there. And
have you seen a steady increase in people? Is it going up or going the opposite way?
I mean, it has been going up, not dramatically or anything like that, but it has been rising some.
And how many people do you serve at your places?
At our location down in Warren on Todd Avenue, we do on Monday through Friday, we actually do lunch and dinner for anyone who's in need. And on Saturday, we do lunch. We typically do around 120,000 a year. So, I mean, it's a pretty outstanding number. And then on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, we do food bags. So people could come in, families could come in. And there we're typically around 15,000 or so a year on average. Sometimes we're around 20,000. Sometimes we might be around 12 for the year. And then Fridays, Second Harvest, I'd like to thank them. They do a lot. They donate anywhere from 10 to 20,000 pounds of produce, and we give that away every Friday, and that's down in Warren. And we have about 300 to 400 families that'll come in for that every Friday and give them.
On a monthly basis, you see how many families, just a ballpark figure, out of all your facilities, just ballpark it.
I'd say probably 500 or 600.
500 or 600?
Yeah.
500 or 600, 300, so we're at about 1,500 families from this little panel right here. Put that into perspective, 1,500 families coming in for help because they cannot afford to feed themselves or their families. And this is only 3 of 150 different organizations that have to get help from the Second Harvest Food Bank. It's just unacceptable. It really is. It's astounding and unacceptable, like what Dr. Padgitt said. It's hard to wrap your hands around the fact that in 2018 that people have to struggle for food when there is such an abundance out there of food that people on a daily basis throw away and don't use or buy too much of and not maybe consciously think of what's going on outside of their own lives. Maybe it's not so much that people aren't really thinking that they need to give. It's maybe they're just not aware of the need in the valley as big as it is, and you folks live it on a daily basis. And we're not talking about these are people that are just down and out and don't care about anything else, and they're just looking for handouts, and they don't want to work, or I could go get here and get food. That's not the case in your places. You're seeing families that work, but just don't have enough to feed themselves.
I think sometimes too, what we see is, people, they work and then all of a sudden, they're working at minimum wage jobs, and sometimes they're working at 2 or 3 jobs trying to make ends meet so that they can provide for the needs of their family. And then like their car breaks down or somebody gets sick or they lose their job. All of a sudden they've lost one of their jobs and they come in and they don't have a backup system. They don't have a system where they can get assistance. And I think the hardest groups, is you don't want to see anybody hungry, and it's really a shame that anybody in America has to be hungry today. But the elderly and the children are the 2 hardest groups to see. When you see a mom coming in, I had a mother come in one morning about 10 o'clock in the morning, and she said, can I get a food basket? And we were starting to put the food basket together, and she started crying. And I said, well, what's going on? And she said, my children are still sleeping, and I have no food to feed them when they wake up. And she said, so that's what made me come in here today. Or a senior citizen who will come in and say, I get $400 a month for Social Security, because some people only get that much. Yeah. And they'll come in and say, if I have to buy medicine or pay something, if it wasn't for you, when the end of the month comes, I would not have food to eat. And you think, this is America, and this should not be happening in America. That, and people are generous, and I think all of us will attest to the fact that our organizations, we receive great assistance from Second Harvest Food Bank, and people are generous to Second Harvest Food Bank, and that in turn helps us. But they're also generous to our organizations, and it's not that people don't see the need. It's that there's systems that are in place that keep people poor or make them feel bad because they need food, and nobody should feel bad because they have to ask for food or want food.
Well, people, there's that pride factor, and you know, I'm Slovak, and my dad used to say the hard-headed hunky that I am, and you know, we have that pride factor that sometimes that might get in the way to some of the people. But when it comes down to it and children are involved or elderly involved, everybody really, it does. You can't even put it into a group. It shouldn't happen. And I think as a community, all of us putting together, and we're going to talk about, we talked about this earlier with Mr. Iberis, with just a minimal amount of help, we could really put an end to this. We could, if with everybody pitching in just a tiny, tiny bit. And I'm not saying that nobody is doing this intentionally and saying I'm not giving to them because those people should go out and get their own job or whatever. I think the most of us, we just don't pay attention. We get caught up busy living life and going out and doing our job and working and taking care of our family and taking Janie to dance and Jimmy here and running around, and we're not paying attention to what's going on to the people at your mission that are really trying to better themselves, but you know, some bad things happen to them, and they just can't. They just need that little boost up, or at God's warehouse where they need a little bit of help till they, you know, maybe they're laid off or whatever. There's a million reasons why they're coming there, and there's a million different types of people that are coming to your place. We just can't let it happen anymore. I thank you so much for the work that you're doing on a daily basis there, and the time and the effort that all of you give. I'm sure there are days when you probably just want to go home and cry with some of the stories that you hear. And so how do we stop it? But if you had one way to say, what can, look at that camera right there and tell those people out there, say, you know, how unacceptable, be thankful for the blessings that tonight when your children come home from playing or doing whatever they're doing, or you're coming home from work and you open up your fridge, there's all that food there for you to eat, and in your pantry it's all sitting there. And we just talked about 3 organizations where 1,500 families, and that's quite a bit. And again, you're only 3 of 150 organizations that are going hungry in this area without food. I'm sure you don't want this to go on. I'm sure that you can help out. I'm sure that you could lend a hand. This is not wasting money. You know, when we go out and we spend $5 or $6 on a cup of coffee, do you realize that $5 or $6 could turn into $66 here in terms of food, and that $1 turns into, 6 meals, I believe. It's an astounding number. It really is. And we're not asking for, to donate your whole pay. Just a little bit of time, a little bit of a dollar here, a dollar there goes a long, long way. Because 10 million pounds a year is an awful lot of food to feed our valley. And it's just an unacceptable amount that we must have to provide to people. It's just so, I can't wrap my hands around that. That's such a huge amount of food. If you put that out, how big of a mound of food would that be? 10 million pounds of food to feed everybody. So go ahead, each one. We'll start with you, Sister Jean. You can make a little plea or tell those people why it's so important to donate here.
One of the reasons why I think it's so important is that Second Harvest is able to leverage the money that they receive and purchase food that we, in turn, at our agencies are able to get at either no cost or low cost to our agencies. And it enables us to have a lot more food to give to people that we would never be able to have if it was not without, the help of Second Harvest Food Bank. And, while all of us always appreciate the canned goods that people donate and other things, the monetary donations are probably the biggest thing, because they can do much more with the dollars that they receive than what we can do, they can do with the canned goods, although those are very helpful and well received also. So we're grateful, and it helps us to help families who are just trying to get by on a daily basis, and who have to struggle to meet their basic needs, and we really need to help them do that.
Mr.
Well,
Mrs.
there's
Olds?
a segment of society we have not talked about, and that are those who are handicapped, whether in a wheelchair or a walker, and so this problem will never go away. And we're doing what we can, but we can do more. I get so frustrated when I open a newspaper and more money went overseas for war and things like that, when we could be taking care of our own.
Yes. That's a whole nother issue there that we could all get angry about, and that.
But we're fortunate, we have a lot of people standing behind us. We have 90 volunteers, and we've been doing this for 15 years, and we've never had to ask for volunteers. It's amazing. We talk about giving, and these people, I was never like that. So when they come around and help us, to me, that astounds me as much as those who are getting food. You know, there are a tremendous amount of good people,
Yes.
and we don't realize that that's our neighbor.
A lot of people, they have somewhat of a waiting list down here at Second Harvest of people willing to give time, and this is a big operation. If you've never seen it, you really should come down and donate sometime. It's a great family thing to do, and it's a great life lesson to show your children of how much food goes out of here. And they could always use an extra hand, but the amount of people that come in here is amazing, willing to help out. We have a great community. We really do.
Yes, we do.
We don't have a big problem here. We do, but it could be turned into a very small problem very quickly if we all just paid a little bit more attention to it. It could be handled very, very quickly. Mr. Hinkle, let's talk about the mission and what you would like to do.
Like you were speaking of earlier, that pride, you know, there's people that come in wanting help, and there's times we need to talk to them because they're almost embarrassed to say that they need help because they've fallen into hard times. And people really need to get away from that. And, you know, unfortunately, all we see on TV are these places wanting you to send stuff overseas and stuff like that. And people who are from this area, the Youngstown area, I mean, we all know that this area has been in a bad spot for some years now. And there's so much that needs to be done in this community. And if you're going to help anyone, what better way than to do it in your own community, in your own backyard? And it's very humbling, you know, working in this industry, in this ministry, and helping out the community and just being a part of it. And people need to understand, like I used to be this way, but I used to think that I was just one person. I'm just one person. I cannot make a difference in a whole community because I'm just one man. But that's what it takes. It takes one individual to start something. You know, it takes one person to step up and do something, and then in turn someone else that maybe you helped along the way, or you know, they see you doing it, so they follow your actions, and then they turn it and start helping. And there's so much more that needs to be done than just donating. You know, they can come donate their time, you know, and just help out. I know our organization, and I'm sure others like your guys, we could always use volunteers just to help hand stuff out and just help us remain organized and help us do this work.
You know, one of the most frustrating things is that when you have a problem or situation and it's unfixable, that's one thing. But when you have a problem or situation like this and it's fixable, and we don't totally fix it, that's the frustrating part of it, because it is totally fixable. Just with a little bit of help, if all, like you're saying, Mr. Hinkle, if everybody pulled together as one, we could make it all better here very quickly, very, very quickly. Mr. and Mrs. Olds, we talked a little bit off camera about one segment that you're helping, and it's starting to rise now, and that's the veterans that are shut-ins, that can't leave for whatever reason. Post-traumatic, or they might be in a wheelchair or whatever, but you're seeing some vets that come to your organization to get food for them.
One of our volunteers is a vet who attends our church, and they have a network where they do for each other. So he came to me with the problem of these vets that simply cannot get to our pantry. So I spoke with Kim, and we did all the paperwork and got the information on the vets. And I have a couple of guys, they come in every month, and they pick up for 31 vets. And we sign them in, and they take it and they hand deliver it to every one of them. And as they get more, we will take on more. But we also provide, Second Harvest has made available to us senior boxes, which is available to people that are 60 years and older if they make under a certain income. And like one person can go up to $1,200. And before I turn the paperwork in at the end of the month, I go through it to make sure it's all filled out. And it blows my mind how many people with one person, their income for the entire month is $400 or $600, or maybe two people, it's $1,000. And I think, I don't even know how they get through the month, but this is the thing. So that's between helping the vets. Now, we do send the vets to senior boxes also, but it's been, again, that's through Second Harvest, so that's been a real boost to our, and we actually gave out 200 senior boxes last month.
Well, thank you for helping those people. Now, you all get a lot of help from Second Harvest Food Bank, but you also, in each one of your organizations, do fundraisers on your own too, through either your churches or your organizations just going out through communities. So as Sister Jean, I know you do that in Girard, right, in
Yes.
Emmanuel.
Yes, we're very fortunate. We have a lot of our local churches are very supportive of our center and do food donations, and people in the community, they know that, you know, when the food comes in, it goes out to people in need, and so they'll make donations. The one thing we do in November, we give out Thanksgiving baskets, and we give people all of the fixings for sides to make Thanksgiving dinner, and then we give them a gift card toward a turkey. And that's one of the times when we can always use donations of like yams and pumpkin and those kinds of things to help people. We do probably about 350 to 400 households for Thanksgiving, we start signing people up in October in our service area. We service Girard, Liberty, Mineral Ridge, and McDonald, and so that's one of the times. But we operate, 5 days a week, and we operate, all year round, and we need food all the time to do that. And people around Thanksgiving and Christmas are very generous, but in the summertime we also need donations of food and things like that. But people don't think about the fact that our organizations are operating. Every month we feed the same. We feed the same number of people.
People don't just eat on Thanksgiving.
Yeah, right.
They eat the other 364 days a year too. Yeah, but we people feel more charitable around the holiday times, and they see more things, and they're more apt to give at that time.
And we're grateful for it.
Yes,
but we're grateful anytime food comes through our door.
But remember, the day after Thanksgiving, they still need it goes back to business as usual, and they don't have food, and you need to tackle that. So, and did you do fundraisers?
No, we don't really, but we are fortunate. Just recently, a doctor who lived in the neighborhood and passes us by on the third Saturday of the month when we give out the food, just bought us $1,000 worth of food up at Giant Eagle. And then we have, this has amazed me about American people. We had a young man last summer driving by, stopped and gave $200 just by what he saw. And we have a man by the name of David George owns a small little factory that makes pepperoni rolls. He goes to our church, and every month we get between 1 and 4 pallets of pepperoni rolls. And then Second Harvest through the years has got us a contact with Panera Bread. So we have small businesses that keep us going besides the food we get here. So it gives us a bigger assortment of food than just what they have here.
And I am not playing this down. I just want to make a point here. That doctor that came through and went and bought $1,000, bless him for doing that. That's what a wonderful thing that he did for you. But I just want to share with you this. If he would have gave that $1,000 to the food bank, or to you, and you would have gave it to the food bank. The food bank would have been able to turn that into $11,000 worth of food. I know if that gentleman probably would have known that, he would have gladly have done it. He would have the same great feeling in his heart for doing it. But that's what this food bank is able to do with your monetary donations. And when I tell you that when it comes down and you look at all the wonderful charities that there are out there that you could donate money to, as lean, as administrative cost as what they do, I think you put this along with Salvation Army, and there's nothing that runs leaner in terms of administrative costs with the amount of all the rest of it goes towards food. And what they can do with those monetary donations is tremendous. They use the grants that are given to them, the companies they work with, and literally it is 11 to 1, which is a tremendous thing. But thank him. Thank that guy for giving that $1,000. We truly appreciate that. But,
absolutely.
And you talk about how the other people, when people see it, they understand it. You know, when you're not around it, it's out of sight, out of mind. But when you come here, and I can't, and we talk about it, I have the anger inside me right now that I don't do enough or have done more in my life to help out. But you know what? That doesn't mean we can't and you can't start right now and make it a weekly or a monthly thing that you could help out these fine organizations, and especially the Second Harvest. And Mr. Hinkle?
You know, like you were talking on Thanksgiving and stuff, a lot of people, that's, like you said, that's all they really think about, but it's, the information isn't put out there, I think, like it should be. And we at the Warren Family Mission really appreciate doing this so that, you know, we, along with these other organizations, can maybe spread the awareness to more people and get the information out there so people know what they can do and are better informed on all of this. It's a problem that's not going away.
But it can't.
It can, yeah. And it like I said earlier, it starts with just one person. Our organization at the Warren Family Mission, we run solely on donations. We don't really do fundraiser stuff. We get our name out there and then run it straight off of donations. We have a lot of restaurants in the area that will donate their food from the night, their leftover food, so that it doesn't get thrown away. And we use that, we'll use that and make meals and stuff. That's, you know, that'll go into like the lunches or the dinners that we serve. We give bread away every day. Every day we have like bread or some pastries and stuff that restaurants or whatever would donate, and we put that out every day.
Well, I want to, you know, there's an old saying, you said this before, there's an old saying that this is a terrible problem and somebody's got to do something about it. And then I realized that I am somebody.
Yeah.
You know, it's really that simple. It's every one of you. You alone are not going to end this, but you collectively in the valley with your family and your friends and your neighbors in your neighborhood and your community groups, all together by just talking about it and passing the word and letting everybody know that $1 given to Second Harvest Food Bank turns into $11 of food going out to the community. I believe it's $1 is 6 meals. It's something that we cannot ignore anymore, and it's something that every one of us should do. You know, we look at our tax bills. You know, when we get our taxes, we pay our real estate taxes. I would certainly have no problem if $5 was tacked on to that. Could you imagine the good that would do? And I don't think anybody else would, especially with some of the ways our money is spent politically in this area and where it goes. Should be, but it's not, but we could still put an end to it. I want to thank all of you for coming out today and enlightening everybody. And I'm sure a lot of you are sitting there with your mouths wide open and feeling that you need to do something about it. I hope you are. We have one of the greatest communities in the world. We get a lot of bad press here in the Mahoning Valley, especially in the Youngstown area, and it's so unfounded. Because to me, I've done a lot of traveling with my business, and I never ever encounter an area with the type of people that we have, with the hearts that we have here in the Mahoning Valley and Youngstown, Warren area. And if we really pulled our resources together and just worked together, we could, like all of you are doing so graciously of your time and your working efforts, we could put an end to this hunger thing. This can stop. So Mr. Hinkle, Mr. and Mrs. Oles, and Sister Jean, thank you very, very much for coming in and helping us to help those people get a little bit more informed about the hunger problem in Mahoning Valley. We're going to be right back and end this episode of 66 Days to Success. I hope that you have that checkbook out and you're getting ready to either come in and help. And before we say that, one more thing. There are 3 ways that people can help. You brought this up, Mr. Hinkle. They can donate food, you can donate money, or you can donate time.
Yep.
You have 3 options. If you don't have the money, you can donate the time. If you do have the money, please donate that or donate some food. It's one of those 3 ways, but please do one of those 3. Welcome back to 66 Days to Success. I hope you were enlightened by all the interviews that we did. Mr. Michael Iberis, the Executive Director at Second Harvest, Dr. Kathy Padgitt talked to us about children and nutrition, and the fine folks from those great agencies. It's sad that we have not done more, but we can't look backwards, we can only look forward. And looking forward, we can fix this problem of hunger in the Mahoning Valley. So please, make a donation, give some food, or give your time. Do one of those 3 things on a consistent effort and a consistent basis to help put an end to hunger here in the Mahoning Valley. It's Avenge Hunger Month at Armstrong. We're going to do our part. We're going to get the word out. We're going to make sure we get enough food donated, the most that we possibly can. We're also going to take part by sending somebody out there to hug 100,000 people to raise $100,000. That can be done. It's going from Labor Day through December 31st, and we hope that you'll be a part of that. When you see that person in the Mahoning Valley, go up, give them a hug, and drop $1 in the receptacle there so that he could give that to the food bank in your name, which will turn into $11 of food. It's amazing what that one simple dollar can do. If you just gave up that 1 cup of coffee, that $5 a month, and gave that to the Second Harvest Food Bank, just think of the good that that's going to do. Just 1 cup of coffee. We could all make that little sacrifice. And if you can't make the sacrifice monetarily, call up the Second Harvest Food Bank and donate some of your time. Thank you again for listening. Please tell everybody you saw this show and ask them to help too. Do something in your neighborhood. Do a food drive. Do something. We are all somebody and we can all make a difference. And we can fight this war on hunger and we can win in Operation 11-1. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you again next month, right back here on 66 Days to Success.